welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the Paralympic Games. It's a global spectacle of some of the most incredible athleticism you'll ever see, but it's all built on a system that, from the outside, can seem, well, pretty complex. And that brings us right to the heart of it, this central puzzle. How can you possibly have a fair competition when the athletes have such wildly different impairments? Think about it. A swimmer with no arms in one lane, a blind swimmer in the next. How do you even begin to level that playing field? Well, stick with us because we are going to unpack that exact question. Okay, first things first, let's clear something up that causes a lot of confusion. The Paralympics and the Special Olympics. They're not the same thing. The biggest difference is the focus. The Paralympics, that's all about elite, high-stakes international competition. The Special Olympics, on the other hand, is all about providing opportunities for sport and celebrating personal growth at every ability level. Both are incredibly important, but they're two distinct movements with different goals. Now, to really understand what the Paralympics are all about, you've got to go back to the beginning. And honestly, it's a pretty remarkable origin story. It all kicked off in 1948. A visionary doctor, Dr. Ludwig Guttmann, organized an archery contest for just 16 British war veterans with spinal cord injuries. It started as a form of rehabilitation, but just 12 years later, that small event exploded. It became the first ever official Paralympic Games in Rome. By '76, we had the first Winter Games, but 1988, in Seoul, that was a huge turning point. That's when the Games started being held in the same city and venues as the Olympics, really cementing that powerful connection between the two. And the growth since then, it's been absolutely staggering. I mean, just look at the numbers. We go from 400 athletes in Rome to over 4,500 in Tokyo. This isn't just a sports competition. It is a global movement that has grown at an incredible pace. Which brings us right back to that big question. How do you make sure the race is fair? The answer, and really the entire bedrock of Paralympic sport, comes down to one single concept: classification. So, what is classification? Well, the official definition tells us it's a system designed to make sure that winning is about skill, fitness, power, and focus. You know, all the things that decide a winner in any sport. The goal is to take the level of impairment out of the equation. So the key idea is grouping athletes based on how much their impairment actually impacts their performance in their specific sport. Probably the easiest way to wrap your head around it is with an analogy we all know. It's a lot like weight classes in boxing, right? You wouldn't put a heavyweight in the ring against a featherweight and call it a fair fight. Of course not. It's the exact same principle, just applied to make sure the competition is about pure athletic ability, not a physical advantage one person has over another. So the whole system starts with these 10 broad categories of impairment. And this list covers a huge range of conditions. You've got things like limb deficiency, which might be more visible, but it also includes less obvious impairments that affect muscle tension or coordination, like hypertonia or ataxia. Plus vision and intellectual impairments. It really shows you just how diverse the field of athletes is. All right, so we get the why behind classification, but how does it actually work when you're watching the events? This is where we get to crack the code. You've probably seen it before. You're watching track and field, and you see these codes pop up next to an event, like T44 or F57. It looks a little technical, but the system is actually pretty straightforward. It all just comes down to a letter and a number. The letter tells you what kind of event it is, and the number tells you the impairment class. And here's the decoder ring. T stands for track events, F is for field. Easy enough. Now the number's where it gets interesting. As a general rule, the lower the number, the more significant the impact of the impairment. Take vision impairment, for example, classes 11 through 13. An athlete in class 11 is almost or completely blind. A class 13 athlete has what's considered the least severe eligible vision impairment. You can see how detailed it is. It's not just about what an athlete's disability is, but how it functionally affects what they can do in their event. So let's go all the way back to our original question. Would a blind swimmer and a swimmer with no arms ever compete against each other? The answer is almost certainly not. Unless the incredibly detailed classification system determines that their very different impairments had a nearly identical impact on their performance in the water. It's this super specific system that levels the playing field and makes elite, thrilling competition possible. But you know, the Paralympics are so much more than just a sporting event with a really clever rulebook. They have a massive societal impact, and that leads to a really fascinating and complex conversation. First and foremost, let's be crystal clear. These are world-class athletes. Full stop. American swimmer Trisha Zorn has won 55 55 Paralympic medals. That's the most of any Paralympian ever. The dedication, the power, the skill, it's just undeniable. This mind-blowing level of performance has led to this powerful media narrative, especially recently. You've probably seen the ads that call Paralympians superhumans. And while that's meant to be inspiring, the superhuman label has actually kicked off a huge debate within the disability community. So on one side, there are obvious positives. It completely challenges old negative stereotypes. It forces people to focus on ability, not disability. But there's a flip side. For some, this superhuman story creates a myth, a standard so high that it makes ordinary disabled people, the millions who aren't elite athletes, feel completely invisible. And this quote right here, it gets to the very heart of that criticism. The narrative can get twisted and used against people. The argument becomes, well, if they can be superhuman and break world records, why are you struggling to find a job? It just completely ignores all the real-world systemic barriers that have nothing to do with personal achievement. Which leaves us with this final, really important question to think about. Do the games ultimately inspire true inclusion for the many, or do they risk creating this awe-inspiring but impossible standard for the few that ends up leaving a lot of people behind? There's no simple answer, and it's a conversation that's going to continue long after the flame goes out.